Hello and good evening, everyone. Sorry for the wait. We just got connected finally. Thank you very much. As usual, please feel joyful. We are here to study and read the Dharma and listen to the teachings. So we generate the right motivation and renew the refuge by doing the refuge and bodhicitta prayer that 3 times. So we will suffice with that. Oyenda Buddha Dharma Zanga Tere Vijay Enlightenment Vaja Ajivendala Ajare Vada Ujuebi Enda Buddha Dharma Zanga Ajare Vijay Enlightenment Vaja Ajivendala Ajare Vada Ujuebi Enda Buddha Dharma Zanga Ajare Vijay Enlightenment Vaja Ajivendala Ajare Vada Ujuebi. So, welcome everyone. Today we are starting the second term's reading on the History of Buddhism by the noted Tibetan scholar Buton Rinchen Drub, whose writing we have had the opportunity to read during the past two terms. So, without further ado, I'll draw your attention to the very text that we are going to start. Last week, it was mainly the week before, previous term, last session, there was great emphasis of how to listen to the teachings properly, with how the 3 defects and 6 impediments. So today we'll now go on to the qualities and definition of an actual student. And if you have the Obermiller's translation, an old edition, is page 95, definition of a student. It is said that Chatushataka Shastkarika, which is the 400 verses writing by Aryadeva, in there it says, one that is sincere, desirous to study, and intelligent, is fit to be called a good student. Accordingly, therefore, we have to consider, 1, the intellectual power, through which one is able to understand the subject studied without blindly accepting them. B, the zeal of one who strives for the knowledge, whatever it takes, time, energy, effort. Any adversities one must in mind, but persevere to study the teachings as you have all braved through this cold night from your home and come here. This shows that you have great zeal. Third is due to reverence with regard to the teacher and the doctrine. Your ability to have that zeal is because you know the truthfulness of the teaching so much and the role of the teacher plays in our lives. So therefore your conscious diligence and your ability to persevere and facing small or some difficulties using your intellectual power, these things greatly assist the teaching and the teacher, not to mention yourself. The student's intelligence. The student must fully understand the subject studied in order that the latter might in reality become an antidote against passions and lead to the attainment of nirvana. So it's saying that one shouldn't be seeking knowledge materialistically for the sake of a status or degree or something. It might even involve them for some reason to inspire you, but primarily one should see the Dharma as incredible medicine that is not found in anything you have acquired or found or studied and learned. So with that sense of certitude and attitude of conviction, you must therefore have that. It says that the three factors render leather fit to use. So here, Tibetan analogy of tanning leather is used, like how to tame our mind, namely greasing, tanning, and drying in the sun. In a like way, the spirit is rendered fit for entering upon the path of liberation through study, analysis, profound meditation. So it's talking about we need to grease the knowledge of Dharma into our dry, kind of abrasive mind, so to speak. Consequently, in order to bring about such a state of spirit, one must be keen upon study, etc. By the aid of three experience, the travelers may easily make the journey. This is talking about tanning the leather. Make the journey by a rock, lofty mountain road. These experiences are sufficient victuals and are good those and travel on the hard, inhospitable path of this worldly existence may easily do so, if they are endowed with force of charity, discipline, and high wisdom. These three, in their turn, all of them depend on study. So it likens the study is like a grease, and contemplation, analysis is tanning the rough leather, and then drying the part that has been soaked by butter or whatever is by the meditation. So this is incredible effort. People like Buton does is try to illustrate the teaching by practical examples. Now, if you have had time to work on leather, you will really appreciate this, how rough our mind is, and often you cannot find any grease. So the desire to study, it is said in the sutra, by 10 means must one strive to attain virtues of the bodhisattvas. What are these 10? Answer, to seek for the doctrine with a serene, sincere mind, free of craft and deceit, and so on. So that's talking about the great keenness to learn knowledge. And second is reverence. The great commentary of Haribhadra on the Ashtasahasrika, this is 8,000 verses on the perfection of wisdom, a famous commentary, says one must study with the best intention. So talking about what is the intent of your study. This means that one must take off the hat, seat oneself in a low seat, become free from the defect of distraction, and study the highest doctrine with the desire to attain salvation. This is talking about all the things we mentioned to avoid the 3 defects and 6 impediments in listening to that teaching, mainly attitudinally. But here it talks about not wearing hat as a thing, because Tibetans really love to wear the hat. And when they're told to put off the hat, they really, and they're usually sitting in the sun. So sometimes His Holiness Dalai Lama says, yes, you can please wear the hat, even the teaching says, because the sun is so hot, particularly in Bodh Gaya. Okay, 3. These distinctive features of the good student cannot be found with all the hearers. Still, if those that are not possessed of them come to hear the doctrine and are able to a certain extent understand the meaning, they will greatly profit. Vasubandhu's famous treatise on how to teach, called Vakya Yukti, says, in those that have accumulated all the factors for the attainment of reap great merit, for instance, at the Saint Shariputra was giving his instruction to the newly ordained monks, a certain Brahmana sitting concealed in the neighborhood listened to him. Having heard the saint's words, he that enters the religious order but still continues to lead a pure, disciplined life will be subjected to suffering of lower kinds. The Brahmana abstained from the inclination towards such sinful deeds. Moreover, we know that when Sangharakshita preached the doctrine, the anchorites who'd secretly listen to him reap the fruit of arhatship. This is talking about people who might be just, listening while doing something also benefited, The hearer of the feeble faculties. So you're talking about faculties of a listener of different levels, feeble, medium, and advanced. There may be such that do not understand at all meaning of that. Like say, sometimes you read the text, you really don't understand what it's all about, which they can hear. They can hear, but they can't understand the meaning. However, if they but listen full of devotion, it's not so much you get to know the thing, but devotion is not kind of affected. They likewise attain great merit. So merely listening with how much of good understanding also have passive benefit, maybe active benefit passively. Indeed, if one but only listens full of faith, and one becomes possessed of great virtues and gives increase to the element of highest wisdom, the germs of which exist in every being. How much more, consequently, this will be the one who understands that with which he hears. We must only take the story of Nanda, the cowherd, who unconsciously trampled with his stick upon the frog, uttering all the while names of the Buddha. The frog, through hearing such, reaped merit in the following birth, and Dharmananda, having been reborn as a sea monster, shut his jaws from merely hearing the name of Buddha that was uttered by the mariners passing by, and did not swallow them with their ship, because in his previous existence he was accustomed to make the salutation to the Buddha. Therefore, since those that have accumulated all the factors for attaining perfection greatly augment their virtues, even if they hear but little of the doctrine, one must, in any case, devotedly listen to the word of the Buddha. So it's talking about how passively the teaching touches and soothes the listener's mind and spirit. Even on the conscious level, his intellect may not have got much out of it. So we shouldn't be impatient, saying, I can't understand this. There's no least benefit in listening to this. So to do that would be wrong attitudes. Okay, the means of study. The Bodhisattva Pitaka, which is the text compiled by Asanga, says, the two causes and two conditions by which living beings attain spiritual purification are agreeable speech with regard to others, and, as concern himself, the right philosophical point of view. Accordingly, the external conditions are reliance upon the teacher and providing oneself with the due necessities of life. The internal conditions are to listen attentively, enter upon the analysis of the subject studied, and render it completely clear with the help of sutras and exegetical treatises. Exegetical treatises are the commentary literature on the Sutra, Vinaya, Abhidharma, written by noted Panditas and Arhats and scholars, and by addressing questions to those that are competent. Consequently, one must bring study to complete achievement and then exert oneself in profound meditation. We read in the Vekhya Yukti, as limestone is burnt with fire and then slaked by water, so is the stone of residue of passions consumed by the fire of the highest wisdom and then slaked by the waters of profound meditation is completely done away with. This high wisdom cannot be obtained without having studied the highest doctrine. Therefore, listen devotedly to the word of the Buddha. He that merely bears the burden of words without understanding their meaning will never attain his aim, just as the boy who heard a paper with a statement putting him in the possession of a treasury fastened to his neck and did not know what its content was. Therefore, although one may have studied a great deal, still in order to get complete comprehension of the subject, one must devotedly listen to the explanation of the meaning of the sutras. The sentinel who does not look attentively about, but content himself with saying, I'm awake, is at length killed by robbers, just in the same way one that has studied much, but only pays attention to words without analyzing their meaning will be soon overpowered by his enemies and the passions. As accurate analysis is itself impossible without the thorough knowledge of the subject study, one must strive to get the clear aspect of its meaning. We may give another example to illustrate the failure of these that pay attention only to a verbal part, namely musicians, who, being afraid of robbers, sing in order to remain awake, and that holds the lamp, administer help only to others, but not himself. So is one who has studied and knows the words, but has no clear understanding of the meaning. Therefore, exclusively for the sake of apprehending the meaning, one must zealously listen to its explanation. Now comes to the actual study, manner of studying. It has three parts: the preparation, the study itself, and the conclusion. The preparation, one must first of all think how to realize the aim of the doctrine, which is to alleviate sentient beings from suffering and the causes, as said in the Jataka. The realization which follows study must be regarded as most important. The student's behavior must be characterized by devotion, in paying reverence to the teacher and the doctrine, by one's acts, speech, and thoughts. We read in the Jataka, sitting on a lower seat, showing the splendor of self-discipline, looking with a sight full of joy, as one that enjoys the nectar of the word. The student, with thoughts full of reverence, concentrated, clear, and free from defilements. Having made these salutations, is to listen to the doctrine as a patient instruction to the physician. So talking about the salutation refers to the refuge prayer. There are some elaborate chantings of the Heart Sutra and some other long dharanis taught by the inconceivable intelligent knowledge of the disciple. So this will come through in a little while. 3, one must meditate upon that bliss which is caused by the accumulation of the factors and conditions for the attainment of nirvana. It is said in Tathagata Achintya Guhya Nirdesha, seldom does a Buddha appear in this world, and seldom may birth in a human form it can be obtained as a result of previous virtue. Alas, the study of doctrine and faith are things likewise hard to obtain, even during 100 eons. And the Lalita Vistara says, human birth and the appearance of the Buddha in this world is not easy to be met with. And so are likewise the attainment of faith, avoidance of the 8 unfavorable states of existence, that is referred to the 4 lower realms and 3 unpleasant states of the higher realms, and the opportunity to study the doctrine. At present, Buddha has appeared, and the favorable state of existence, faith, and the possibility of study the doctrine are all them secured. Therefore, do away with all distraction. So this is talking about rejoicing that fact that we have the fitness and faith and determination and time and to listen and study these teachings. And it's not so much what is it that we particularly learned tonight in addition to yesterday, but the fact that we maintain that goodness of joy and devotion, continue to enrich ourselves. There may come a time which for millions and millions of eons, it will not be it to hear the word of the doctrine. Therefore, once you may obtain it, now give up all distractions. However, we read in the Vakya Yukti, the word of the Buddha, opportunity to hear it, the desire to study wisdom and absence of impediments, these 4 are hard to be obtained. Therefore, listen to the word of the Buddha when it is possible. And if a living being dies, will he, in the next birth, meet with the jewel of the doctrine or not? Will he come to study the doctrine? Will there be one that explains to him? No one can tell. Therefore, at present, you must zealously listen to the words of the teacher. Again, if one exists in the phenomenal world, one is inevitably reborn. But this new life usually passes away in vain, for the perfect word that shows its right way is seldom to be heard here, It is rare as the flower of Udumbara. Udumbara is a kind of a very rare flower that only sort of blossoms when the Buddha appears. It's one of the kind of rare situations, almost impossible. Now the study itself. The study itself must be in harmony with 6 transcendental virtues. So this is when we recite the prayer at the beginning, through virtue of giving and the like, so refer to the generosity and so on. When you listen to the teaching, you could be practicing all the 6 paramitas concurrently. First, consecrate 3 media of service of the doctrine. So physical, verbal, mental devotion, and generosity, whatever you need to do to make the teachings available. Yeah. And second is suppress sinful inclination and remove all the defects that hinder one to become a worthy receptacle of the doctrine. 3, endure odds and patience. 4, be zealous in study, which is right effort. 5, concentrate the mind upon the words and the sense. And the concentration is to see the points. 6, as concerned the climax of wisdom, distinguish the highest degree, the attainment of transcendental knowledge, the intermediate apprehension, preservation, and memory analysis, in following the word, and the lowest, the 5 immeasurable feelings. So that's how the teaching itself become a 6 paramita practice. You stay very present with how the 3 folds and 6 impediments, then they become accumulation merit in itself. So sometimes people could be thinking materialistic, saying, what did I learn tonight that I didn't know? You know, what I'm going to learn more next time, there wasn't much new. If we have these kind of attitudes, that's the doubt. That's antithesis of diligence and joy. So we need to not look for the small temporal benefit, but overall comprehension and appreciation. And then it talks about how to conclude the teaching session, the conclusion. When teaching is finished, student must pray the teacher to forgive his mistakes, pronounce the blessings, and render his things. So this usually, the dedication merits is the essence of it, yeah? So sometimes in ornate, very elaborate rituals, you can see they all get up and they line up and carry horses and donkeys and everything over to the teacher as a symbol of all of those they want to offer. So it means you will purify lots of karmic debts by making offerings, by receiving teachings, and you honor the teaching, then all the baggage of the karmic debts of what we have or had or still want and greed and so on, these are still burdensome debts. So when we dedicate and offer the things, like people usually make a list of long, maybe 2 A4 pages, they're making a list of what they're making the offering for, and what karma they have, and what karma they may have with parents, and they know they owe some gratitude to them, but they still, you haven't really concerns. How can I repay the kindness of parents? So you make the offering to dedicate for the parents living, deceased, sick, and the world that is going through difficulties. You people make offerings of that. So that's really Vedana that you see in the Buddhist circles that we can see slowly. It is starting to establish in the West as well, without making money as a constraint for people receiving teaching. But everybody knows that how to support it directly and indirectly, and mainly as expression of gratitude, not so much the monetary cost of giving the teaching. That shouldn't be the reason or whatever. But so that's the conclusion. The instruction for realizing the aim of the doctrine. Now, one having heard and listened to the teachings properly according to the prescribed procedure, it says, in order that study and analysis might have an effective result, he that is studied and gives himself up to analysis. So it means we have to examine and use rationale to the contents of the teachings, must live in pure discipline and practice profound meditation. So you need to do things that really backs the teaching that you heard through your own discipline and meditation, because that way you will have a command of comprehension that otherwise is difficult. Accordingly, pure moral disciplines are needed in order to act as a support for him, that is, to realize the aim of the doctrine. That it is said in Samadhi Raja Sutra. If he that has become well-versed in numerous works of the doctrine is proud of his knowledge and does not preserve his discipline, he will not be able to save others by his great learning. The moral impure, he is doomed to hell. So this is talking about how knowledge, however confident you are, will actually benefit very little to the people when you don't have the matching command of discipline and humility and overall discipline. Yeah. Accordingly, extensive study must always be connected with pure morals and analysis of the meaning and profound meditation. So here, Buton is highlighting the Shila, Samadhi, and the Prajna. The Shila is conduct, and the Samadhi is the meditation, and Jnana is the wisdom. These three are like a triangle. You need all of these mutually support each other. It is said in the passage of scripture concerning the monks who have got a firm stand in the principle of the doctrine, by study and analysis only with hard practice of meditation, one is unable to get firm stand in the doctrine. Yeah, no matter how good one's meditation is, study is, very, very articulate, but if you lack the experience of meditation, you wouldn't have a great firm grounding to support others. But if both parts, study on one side and analysis and meditation on the other, are resorted to and accepted as a foundation, one gets a firm stand in the doctrine. Moreover, Sutta Alankara, this is Asanga's famous text, says, therefore, the meditation of the saints can never be fruitless. Therefore, the teaching of the Buddha can never be useless. Useless would be meditation if morality were perceived through mere study. Senseless would be the teaching if one could practice meditation without having studied. Therefore, see, this is talking about the harmony between study, knowledge, and the discipline, meditation. If one hasn't, so there are quite a few Tibetan schools who say they are more sort of balance with all three, others are too dry and academic, and that could be said in every school and individuals. There's not a easy thing to generalize. One school is very intellectual, others not. There are different grades of people in one very group, so we shouldn't really lump and make a judgment that some authors who in the 80s wrote about what makes the lineages in Tibetan are different and this and that. They are fairly unreliable hypotheses and not based on facts. There are many good practitioners in all groups. However, some areas they have yet to improve and become adequate. So we, as a student, we should not form such views, bad thoughts, because it's not medicine in your mind. It's going to cause more aberration. Therefore, in order to have an antidote against perverse conduct, which is the foundation and the cause of much suffering, one must watch over one's discipline and make all of one's effort to become purified of this sin. The gradual order in which this is to be attained is demonstrated by Shantideva as follows. Be patient, strive to obtain study, then betake thyself to the forest, and having concentrated thy mind, meditate upon the impurity of all that arouses our afflictions. Accordingly, first of all, we must become possessed of endurance with regard to the odds that may be met with. If such endurance is wanting, aversion towards worldly existence will never arise, and one will never enter upon the study of the doctrine that delivers from this existence. And if one has not studied, one cannot come to know the means of doing away with all the afflictions, which is concentration of mind. Consequently, we must strive to obtain learning, but if one is contented with having studied and leads a dissolute life, the concentration of mind can never be brought about, and as says the Chandra Pradipa. Chandra Pradipa is what we call the radiant text of the moon, which is one of the seminal Mahayana literature. Addressed with words that harmonize with doctrine, those that follow the usage of wordlings show in return wrath, hate, and disbelief. And though they understand the meanings of the doctrine, they have no faith in it. Yeah, they are what they call that when your knowledge and discipline is completely hijacked by doubt and skepticism, and all these things can make people who have really learned it so fast, they almost so fast, so learned it, and then quickly they lost it. We see that all the time, particularly people who try to think that they are realizing some particular aims that will require many years of checking. Therefore, then they lose the faith, the teaching. They throw the baby with the bath water. Therefore, one must abstain from making friends with the worldlings and repair to a solitary rich forest, as we read in the Bodhicharyavatara. In the woods, the beasts, the birds, and the trees do not utter harsh words, abusive words. Oh, when shall I come to live among them, with whom it is easy to make friends? Here, Shantideva talks about the attractive kind of environment of solitude, where you don't have the demanding people of the unruly existence on your life, so you only have your ability to interact with the nature. So that's really, often they talk about the merit of solitude, demerit of desire, and so on, to make yourself weigh. And quite a lot of monastic Buddhist people, do heed to that, and definitely give up everything and seek to practice. And individuals fare differently according to their course of action and guidance, or lack thereof sometimes. Sometimes people don't get sufficient guidance. They just think they know the stuff, and they go in caves and they haven't learned anything ins and out of the teachings of the tradition, the ritual, the practices. They just know they have to do so many prayers or mantras away from, which is reasonably true. So it's hard to flee and become free from the thing you're fleeing from. When what you're fleeing from is not things or people, it's your own unresolved negative emotions. So unless Dharma, merit of Dharma is so strong, and patience is good, and comprehension is good, and you have ability to accept past karma without judging or the law of cause and effect of your recent good deeds and so on, one shouldn't doubt about their efficacy. It's just a question of how many other things are on ahead of the thing that's waiting to be ripened or matured or exhausted. So individual will fare differently. Then one must take all one's effort to attain concentration of mind, for if one does not become free from distraction, one will never come to practice profound meditation. As a result of this meditation is to be the complete purification from all the afflictions, one must meditate upon impurity of all that arouses them, So talking about one should see the unsatisfactoriness of things that we desire are actually undesirable. They may look be desirable, they're the very trap that you will not get a benefit very soon. So therefore, if you have the reserve of merit, you can do that. Other times, if you don't have the reserve merit, you do too much too soon, and then you have the lack of the depth and breadth to handle that. Like the Buddha himself, living on a single grain of rice, of not even that, for all those time, in very cold, severe nights and days, weeks. And his stamina and resilience is only comparable to other bodhisattvas. So when we lack that, we should not be discouraged, but hope to stay present in the situation that, however difficult it is, will unfold you. Again, if one has studied much, does not fulfill the precepts of the doctrine, he will commit a great sin. The Uga Paripracha says, if one that is greatly learned meets the complements of condition for attaining salvation, but nevertheless continues to be attached to worldly property, etc., does not purify his mind, he will remain alone and will deceive all living beings, including the gods. And in the Ratnakutta Sutra it says, O Kashyapa, just as some who are born by the waves of ocean may at the same time die of thirst, in the same way, O Kashyapa, some Brahmins, ascetics, having studied many religious works and mastered them completely, are still unable to appease the thirst of desire, hatred, and infatuation. Thus, although they are born by the waters of the ocean of the doctrine, they perish from thirst caused by passions and fall into the evil births. Consequently, since the preaching of the doctrine with one's lips without any practical application, as I do it, is worthless, one must regard this practical application as the most important part of the matter. It is said in the Adhyaya Sanchodhana Sutra, it has 17 particular points that it is raising. First, proud of one's great learning, one is full of disregard towards others, indulges in dispute and controversies, is forgetful and has no clear understanding. Such are the defects of him who takes delight in insane auditory. So talking about just mere lip service, verbosity, and trying to have a good ability to speak, but it does not match the ability to comprehend use. 2, one is far from having deep thoughts. One's outward appearance and mind lose their serenity, as one is alternatively subjected to great arrogance and humiliation. So talking about the hazard of knowledge. In Vajrayana Buddhism, we have 8 offerings. The first offering is for drinking water, knowledge of the Dharma. Second is to wash the feet from the pride of dust of pride, that one thinks one knows the Dharma better than others. So that shows that everything has to be understood in a very careful manner. 2, one is far from having deep thoughts. One's outward appearance, mind lose their serenity, and one is alternatively subject to great arrogance and humiliation. I think I read that. 3rd, the worldling loses all consideration for the highest doctrine, is harsh and has no thoughts of love, and is far from possessing concentration of mind and transcendental knowledge. Such are 4, he is always irreverent with regard to the teachers, and finding pleasure in obscene tales, pays attention to that which is worthless, and become destitute of high wisdom. Such are the defects of him who takes delight in the insane auditory. So that's the 5th line is repeated after. each. So he is 5. He is not esteemed by gods and the spirits, nor has he any desire to obtain such esteem. And as to correct knowledge, he possesses none. Such are the defects of him who takes delight in insane oratory. 6. He is always reproved by the wise, to whom his nature is perfectly clear. His life passes away in vain. Such are the defects of him who takes delight in insane oratory. 7. The worldling laments at the hour of death, saying, I have not attained any positive result. What am I to do now? He suffers greatly by not having partaken of the deeper sense of life. Such are the defects of him who takes delight in insane oratory. He is wavering, number 8, he is wavering like grass agitated by the wind, always full of doubt, and never may call a firm conviction is on. Such are the defects of him who takes delight in insane oratory. 9. Like an actor on the stage that speaks of the heroism of others, he has no prowess of his own. Such are the defects of him who takes delight in the insane oratory. 10. He becomes fraudulent and easily loses hope. Again he enters upon dispute and controversy. He draws far from the highest doctrine of the saint. Such are the defects of him who takes delight in insane oratory. 11. Feeble in strength, one rejoices to praise, and destitute of right knowledge, trembles when abused. One's mind is fickle like a monkey. Such are the defects of him who takes delight in insane oratory. 12. As one's mind is not possessed of correct knowledge, one commits errors and depends on others, and finally falls prey to the passions. Such are the defects of him who takes delight in the insane oratory. 13. One's visual sense is deluded, and so is auditory. The olfactory sense errs, and so does the gustatory. The tactile sense and the intellect are likewise erring. Such are the defects of him who takes delight in insane oratory. 14. One's mind, being always in the power of auditory sensation, one is intoxicated by well-sounding words and acquires no true knowledge, thinks incorrectly, and enters upon evil path. Such are the defects of him who takes delight in insane oratory. 15. Having for a long time found pleasure in the words, one does not obtain real satisfaction, for it is better to ponder over the meaning of one word through which one may attain infinite joy. 16. The bark of a sugar cane by itself has no value, for that which gives pleasure is sweetest juice, is contained within. If one eats only the bark, one is not able to taste the exquisite juice of sugar. 17. The mere words by themselves are like the bark, and the meanings contained in them like the sweet juice. Therefore, having is to find pleasure in the mere sound of fine words, ponder over the meaning and always be attentive. All these methods of studying and preaching the doctrine. Buton, with a large mouth, who has studied much, but has neither realized which he has learned, nor accumulated the factors for attaining salvation, has written down. May he nevertheless be, by the force of previous virtue, after his death, which will soon take place. partake of Maitriya's religious feast on the regions of Tushita, finish the investigation of the methods of study and teaching, the first chapter of History of Buddhism called Jewelry of Scripture. So that concludes the first chapter, actually, because that talks about what the Buddha's teachings are, who the Buddha is, and therefore analyzes what the teachings are, and identify quite a lot of list of the 12 great branches of the 12 great branches, which has 60 melodies of the 84 discourses the Buddha gave. So he identified most of the important texts that contain the teachings. And then he talks about the importance of merit of listening and reading, listening to the teaching, to general Dharma teaching, and particularly the Mahayana teachings. And then he identified all the Mahayana literature, all those major Mahayana Buddhist literature, which somewhat is not accepted by some southern Buddhist schools due to whatever causes and conditions. So Buddha goes to identify the merit of listening to Dharma in general, particularly Mahayana teachings, and then he talks about the importance of study and reading and the rational reasoning mind, and then of course goes to explain the merit of listening and contemplating the teachings for a long time to come. Even though one may not see the immediate benefit, he tried to instill faith in all of the long-term benefit that they will have in studying and listening and studying the teachings. And then he went on to talk about the qualities of the teacher, characteristics of the teacher, and the qualities of the disciple and his characters, and then talked about the actual etiquette of requesting the teachings and receiving the teachings and the dedicating the merit. So what has Buton done is he's just introduced the Buddhism itself before talking about the history. So first people need to know that. And so it's good space to stop here tonight, everyone. If you have any questions, we have a few more minutes to discuss. Over to you, everyone. So, the part 2 of the book is History of Buddhism, in which how the Buddha Dharma came in India, and then how, as a consequently, it came to Tibet. I'm sure he would not mention other countries and places where some of the great Indian masters did a great influence to spread Dharma before they reached to Tibet. So from here onwards, it's mostly rely on the historical data of individual Buddhist personages, who were who, what they do, how much they studied and traveled and translated, and established the Dharma in very dark land like Tibet. It was a really hard place then. People are unruly and they all live on meat and animal husbandry, and has their own indigenous belief called Bon form of religion. And it took lots of effort to grease the leather and and to tan it, and finally to sun it. So what's now we're talking about is in the 21st century, and so it's good to know what was the history of Buddhism. based on very reputable scholars writing like Buton and others. So we are going to do that. Thank you, everyone. We're going to dedicate the merits, and we'll continue this for this term on each Thursday night. So thank you, everybody who has helped and have come and attended. It's really good to see each other's company. So we do the dedication merit. Om Bade Mere Me Horaga Dadeva Medzaga Honez Meale Berado Birode Ojono Bato Desineze Erenda Mahayana Jijin Vadewa Mereda Shavekru Mehobi Bekastan Lovers Tuhoda Mahayana Jijin Courage Manju Shrinyodin Azama Rabadadelawa following Adezambo Ajadegade Mede Salambo Dizida Teba Vehitanayadaza. It has been bombing, really generation. Just a small update to those of you, since we have the opening of the temple. There still are a few things we haven't completed such as the what do you call on the veranda outside in front of the Gompa, we have 10 big pillars, and inside the Gompa you can see between the pillars you have, on top of the pillar you have the bow, and then artistic carvings and so on, paintings. So we didn't get to do that to the outside 10 pillars. So that's why Lama Nubula, who came from Nepal, has extended his stay, and he is working really hard and with assistance of a few other people. So within maybe another 3-4 weeks, maybe that too will be all completed. Please feel free to drop by the center and contact the center. Should you wish to host a session or lead a session on Sundays and other, please do that, because we have to need the Sangha effort to keep the momentum going. Not just maintain some regular session, but ideas how to promote it so that this beautiful center is a person by our community, and people are taking some roles and responsibility to ease the roles that others may not always be able to do, which is quite not the case, So please don't shy away thinking you are not able to lead the meditation or things like that, because you can, Remember yourself, or someone else introduce you to the Dharma and sit with you or whatever. So please, we need the Sangha's effort. Don't rely on some invisible people who will be able to do everything, because we just don't have them. People actually think there is a center that will do, but the center is made out of individuals, and you need to form that connection and contact the committee and Rachel and so on, and say there are people coming, for instance. It's good to have someone here to show them around, for instance. So most people don't, just overwhelmed by the whole thing, they don't know what to do. So it's good to tell them a little bit and show them around, and make a connection to the people, that there was somebody from the center that was there to help. It might be maybe just 2 hours a week you are able to come, and then let Rachel know that you can be there, and then because we are not often sure who can be there, because unless there are multitude of sanghas who think and then bring your willingness to assist. And some of them may not be too difficult responsibilities, just getting to know the center yourself, because you may not know a lot. And so there are a few people doing most of the things, and they need everybody's help. We have good responsibility to attract the visit of His Holiness and others regularly, so we need to do this work. So thank you, everyone. That's all. See you next week. Tonight we finish early because it was such a good place to stop, and it was I had a little chill before we started, and so I'm now recovered, but don't want to overdo it. Thank you, everyone.